Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to Harriet Tubman, Love in Actions. I am Karol V. Brown, your host, and I am just so excited that you're here today. If you haven't been here with us before, I'll just let you know what this is all about. This program is based on the life of Harriet Tubman, as I have been portraying and studying Harriet Tubman for over 25 years now. And I know how we all can learn some positive lessons from learning about Harriet. So I wrote two books about Harriet Tubman. Both are curriculums teaching lessons. And this program, we highlight each chapter in the book, The Harriet Tubman Way, an inspirational guide to self-love, empowerment, and legendary leadership for girls. I am Auntie Carol here. Feel free to call me that because this program is for girls aged 10 to 14. And I want to be that auntie that they feel that they can come and learn from, talk to. I feature guests who are strong, beautiful women who can give some great wisdom or share their own personal stories so that the girls listening can get inspiration, mentoring, and just know that they can do it too. That's why I use Harriet Tubman. If Harriet Tubman had in her mind that she could be free and she could do what she wanted to do in life, and she left a legacy of love, all of us can do that. Tonight, going to be a little bit different. Welcome again to Harriet Tubman Love in Actions. And last week, I wasn't able to be on live. And actually, I don't think I had a program at all. But I did post it on my own YouTube channel. And I advise you to go to my YouTube channel, which the link is right here, and subscribe so you don't miss anything. I am moving more and more of my content to my own YouTube channel. This is Bold Brave TV, which has been where I've been for the almost a year now. Come to my own web page, my own website where you can buy the book. Come to my YouTube channel where you can see all the programs that I have presented here for this TV program and future podcasts that are coming. I see I'm changing the format a little, and today is one of those days that you'll see a little bit change in how I usually present. So let's go to the next slide. First, I want to say last week I had two beautiful young ladies, Erica Wanda and Erica Dronda Joseph. I call them the Joseph twins. We talked about mentoring and listening and learning, and they were very articulate and delightful to have on the program. So do go to the YouTube channel, Karol V. Brown, at Karol V. Brown 7153, and you'll find this under Karol's TV programs. It's a lot more there too. Today, our program is on chapter 16, Practice Communication Skills. The person who opens it up with her quote is Erykah Badu. What does music mean to me? I don't think I would really be much without it. Without it coming through me, it is my means of communication, my means of growth, my means of transportation from one point in my life to another. In the book, after the chapter on communication, the story is about Harriet Tubman and all the different ways that she communicated with other people. Creativity is part of being creative in your communication is very important. So when we say practice your communication skills, being creative is a definite way to show how creative you can be and how you can communicate in so many different forms. For Erykah Badu, it's by way of singing. And again, there's more than just talking. Tonight, you're going to be introduced to the word poetry and Paul Laurence Dunbar. You're going to hear a lot more about Paul Laurence Dunbar today. But let's talk about what poetry is. Poetry is a form of artistic expression that uses words to invoke emotion, paint pictures, and share experiences through rhyme, sound, and meanings. It often uses verses, imagery, and metaphors and emotion to express thoughts in a powerful, condensed, and sometimes musical way. Poetry can be spoken, written, and or performed, and it speaks to the heart as much as to the mind. So poetry is another way of practicing communication. I hope you listen to some poetry sometime, or even maybe you write poetry. Sometimes people don't have the words to say what they want to express, or they may be afraid to say how they really feel about something. And that's when these different communication skills come into play. Singing, write a song, write a poem, drawing a picture. Art gives you an expression to be free and to use what's on your mind and make it come out in a way that you can get your point across and not feel threatened. Isn't that beautiful? Let me tell you about my guest today. Her name is infuses stories with music, rhymes, and rhymes to share personal, family-friendly stories about families and faith and hope and the love of Jesus Christ, and to share poems about life's lessons, bought, borrowed, and taught to make them memorable. She shares in person and on Zoom. She's been featured teller in Artists Standing Strong Together, TGIF Family Story Fest, Texas Storytelling Festival, Celebration, Rock Wall Storytelling Guild Story Swap, and Story Space. She was Rock Wall Storytelling Guild Rising Star at the 2023 Texas Storytelling Festival, and she's a founding member of the Rock Wall Storytelling Guild, which is an affiliate guild of the Texas Storytelling Association. In addition to storytelling and poetry writing, she's married with children and provides fulfillment and provides full-time care to her mother. She can be reached at Viveca Dean at Outlook.com. That's VICECADEANES at Outlook.com. She sings, and she and I both are part of a group of people who love to recite Paul Laurence Dunbar poems. So you're going to meet Viveka. We're going to talk about communication skills. And again, you will be introduced more to Paul Laurence Dunbar, who he was, and why we're even talking about him. So let's get started. Well, today I have another special guest. I've just met so many interesting people through things I'm involved in. This is Viveca Deanes, and she is part of the Dunbarian group. Dunbarian group are a group of people who love Paul Laurence Dunbar. And we're going to introduce you to that as this day, our topic is communication. Practice your communication skills. And Viveka is a very talented storyteller who incorporates song into her stories and just has such an excellent way of communicating that I just said, this is the topic for you, Viveka. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, yes. So tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up.
Originally, I'm from Troy, Alabama. Lived there until I was 7 and lived in Selma, Alabama until I was 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
What a history there, back there.
Yeah, yeah, on both ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's it like being in Selma as a teenager and your time period, knowing all the history that comes from Selma now, as far as Black people and civil rights?
To be honest, I was shielded a lot from what was happening. And I believe I believe what happened was those that went through it, it was an embarrassing time for them.
Hmm.
Um, it's the generations now are the ones that are hailing them as heroes and celebrating what they did. But I believe it was an embarrassing time for them that they just wanted to get through it and forget about it. I was married with children when I learned that my junior high school principal was the person that called Martin Luther King Jr. to come to Selma to help. So
Mm,
just think about how much time.
yeah.
And I married late in life. Yeah, just I don't remember what age I was that I learned that my dentist was his house was one of the places where the meetings were held. So
Mm,
they were just everyday people to me, and that's the way they carried themselves, was just
hmm.
as everyday people. So a lot of it I learned on a personal level as an adult. To be honest, growing up, there wasn't any talk about it.
That's very interesting that, well, that just shows you how history goes. We
Yeah,
we can look at what those people, everyday people who were willing to come out their house and fight for their rights, march
yeah,
down the street knowing that they could be attacked, but
yes,
believing that it was important enough to go and voice their opinion and show their um, belief that they deserve to be able to vote and be treated equally. And
yes,
now they're heroes. And that's just
yeah,
great, great, great lesson for all of us today who feel compelled to do something or say
right,
something,
exactly,
but might be a little
exactly.
afraid of it. But if when people come together, that gives strength in the movement. That's
Yes.
interesting to know that they were didn't talk about it afterwards. They didn't think much about it. They just went on with their lives.
They did, and when you add to that I didn't move into that community until I was 8 actually, because the first year that we moved there, I lived out in the county with my aunt and her and uncle and their daughter. So when I moved into Selma, actually, I was going to 4th grade. So all of my classmates maybe grew up with this knowledge.
Hmm.
But, it was kinda like I was just kinda dropped dropped
Okay.
in, and I didn't have this history that they had.
Right. Well, that's a good point too, because we can't assume. We were talking about communication, and that's one thing to start opening up with because you can't assume that people know the history behind what we're talking about. When I talk about Harriet Tubman, not everyone was educated on who she was, and so quite often I have to give some background on who she was. So yes, communication, that's an important skill for us all to have, right?
Yes, definitely.
So in this chapter talks about how um, Harriet and the people who were enslaved at that time had to be creative when it came to communication, and she had to they communicated with songs. I have a story where she had a letter written when she was free before she can come back to rescue her brother. She had a letter written in coded message because she knew that the white postman, would open the mail of any black person that received a letter and they would read it. So they read the letter and could not get the code broken to what she was trying to say. They had to call in the gentleman whose letter it was, who happened to be able to read and write, and he knew immediately. He knew
Mm,
immediately what she was communicating to him. That's what
Right.
the power of being creative with communication is all about.
Yeah.
As a storyteller, tell us about that journey with you.
In terms of communicating, a funny thing, a funny story to me now wasn't so funny when I was a little girl. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, in fact, all of my grandparents were old enough to be my great grandparents. My maternal grandmother, Alice, was born 1899. And I learned that she and I had a different vocabulary. We had gone, mom and I were still living in Troy, but we had gone to visit her. And she mentioned that the cat had found kittens in the backyard. And, at 5 or 6 years old, that was just puzzling to me that a mama cat would, like, what happened to the mama? And she said, she's out there. And I looked and I mean, it was, well, if she's out there, I didn't understand how these kittens were lost and the mom was there. And it sounded like she had maybe abandoned the kittens and this other cat had taken over to care for the kittens. Well, we played Who's on First, What's on Second, I Don't Know's on Third for I don't know how many rounds.
Explain that
And
because we're talking to 10-year-olds that may not have
oh,
ever heard
that's
that.
true. So, who is the name of someone? What is the name of someone else, another player? And I don't know is the name of another player. Who is on first? What is on second? And I don't know is on third. It's referring to the bases in a baseball game. And it's from an old comedy routine. Was it the Stooges? The Three
It might,
Stooges?
it might have been. I don't remember who it was.
Yeah. But the characters that originally shared this story, they would say, "Who's on first?" And the other one would say, "I don't know." And then the first person would say, "No, he's on third." And the other one would say, "What?" And he said, "No, he's on second." So it just kind of would keep revolving in that way. Who's on first? Before any understanding that this was not, they were not asking questions, they were making statements because who, what, and I don't know were the names of the characters.
Right, right.
Right. And so grandma and I played this similar type thing about this cat found who had found kittens in the backyard for what felt like forever, but probably was less than 5 minutes before my mom finally said, Vic, when mama says found, she means gave birth to. Why didn't you just say that? But uh, in my family, um, that was almost like a taboo subject to discuss pregnancy or giving birth, any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, they just wouldn't use those terms. So she said found to mean that her cat had given birth to kittens in the backyard. So when I kept asking, where's the mama? She kept saying she was there. It was most confusing.
That's a great example of
Yeah.
how, if you don't know the terminology or the vocabulary or technical words, we heard technical jargon. Don't use the technical jargon when you're talking to somebody who's not
Yeah.
familiar with it because they will not know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I actually come from a technical background, and I had that was one of the things that I would stress when students would give presentations was present this very technical topic as if you're talking to a 5-year-old, or your grandma, whoever.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some. I remember a student wrote back to me years later, thanking me for that because he had to present to a diverse group of people that had, uh, I guess, charge for this project that he was on, and he needed everybody at the table to understand the importance of the project and the importance of what was needed for this project. But if he had gone strictly technical, he might not have gotten the funding that he needed for that project because
Hmm.
he would have left people at the table who still didn't understand the importance of it and what was needed.
That's right. That is exactly why communication is so important, and being able to communicate with more than just one person or one level of understanding. The
Exactly.
key is to be able to have variety of ways to get your point across so that all that you want to know what you're saying can understand it. And then
Exactly.
and then there's different ways of communicating. Let's talk about nonverbal because
Oh
that's
yeah.
important too. And I know in storytelling, we use all types of forms of communicating, different
Exactly.
voice inflection and things. Talk a little bit about storytelling, how you approach it.
Yes. I with storytelling, I tend to tell personal stories. So if it's something that's exciting, then I express excitement. If it's something that's not exciting, then or even sad, then I communicate that sadness in my voice. You hear the difference in the tones that I just used just now?
Yes.
Yes. Facial, then it's the nonverbal things, just facial expressions. I don't have to say I didn't like something if I just kind of do a,
Mm-hmm.
I can show that I'm very thrilled with something if I just go.
Yes.
So there are a number of ways to communicate. I have some friends who, um, when we were younger, we were so close that literally we could hold full conversations across a room without saying anything. And it would be something like I just do a look to make sure that they saw what I was referring to. And then I might just go, and that's
Hmm.
saying, what's going on there? One of my roommates, I tell a story sometimes. We were close enough that we could hold 5 different conversations without ever saying, "Oh, change channels." Sometimes now I have to say to somebody, "Okay, changing channels," meaning we're changing subjects,
Hmm.
and then switch to the next thing. But with her, we could just continue the conversation nonstop and never announce that we were changing subjects. One friend was particularly thrown by that, and he admitted he said, "I'm not trying to hear your conversation or know what you're talking about, but." And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it was to him like going from cooking in the kitchen to walking through the zoo, and he didn't understand when we even left the house.
That's funny.
Yeah. And then there are times I have some friends that it's like our souls are connected, actually. I can just think about them and the
Yeah,
phone will ring.
right.
Or they can think about me and the phone will ring. And we have loved ones who don't believe us until we show them. On 2 occasions, well, multiple occasions, with 2 friends that I can think of, um, they've laughed. They're already laughing when they answer the phone when I've called them, and then when they explain what they're laughing about, they were just talking about me to somebody,
Hmm.
and I called, and then they turned the phone to show the person because they had told them that we have this connection, and
Right.
they turned the phone to show them who was calling. Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard of that too. Yeah, we say, I
yeah,
was just thinking about you. That's very common.
it is. It
That's
is.
that connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Oh, it's Erica Badu.
Hmm.
And she said, what does music mean to me? I don't think I would really be much without it. Without it comes through me. It's my means of communication, my means of growth, my means of transportation from one point in my life to another. So everyone has their own different way of what they are, well, their skills in certain areas. Like she's a singer. You also
Mhm.
are a singer. So tell you how you, what, do you write songs?
I I don't, not really. I've kind of been trying to dabble in that, but my playing skills are just not to that point yet. So I'm
Uh-huh,
learning.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah,
But you enjoy singing.
I do enjoy singing. I so a recent communication that I needed to do, I had some little ones that I needed to talk about bees to yesterday, in fact. And there are some things about the bee world, in human terms, they would not be acceptable. We'll just leave it at that because these are 10 to 14-year-olds that'll be listening to this.
Yes.
But so I thought, well, how do I communicate this? So I, there were just some things that I couldn't go into. So I just talked about the relationships of the bees that are in the hive. There's a queen bee, and she's the mommy of all the honeybees in the colony. The worker bees are the sisters of all the honeybees except the queen in the colony. And the drones are the brothers of all the honeybees except the queen in the colony. And except the queen because she's the mommy of
Mm-hmm.
all the honeybees in the
Right.
colony. And so just a quick line of that. The queen bee is the mommy of all the honeybees in the colony. The worker bees are the sisters of all the honeybees, except the queen in the colony. The drones are the brothers of all the honeybees, except the queen in the colony. And so we shared that. I shared that song with
Cute,
them.
cute, cute.
Thank you. And and I have to credit the Holy Spirit with giving that song to me. I was thinking, how do I communicate this to these little ones? Because even as a mother, I didn't do baby talk with our children. So I talk to babies the same way I'm talking to you now. So
Uh-huh.
I was thinking, okay, how do I string this together in a song? I wanted the story that happens in the hive, the relationships in the hive, to be something that will be memorable to them.
Right.
And I know for me, if it's in a song, I tend to remember it better.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And right, so I wanted it to be something that if they didn't remember anything else, they would have something portable that they could carry with them for life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what music is to me. It's a portable message. It connects with me because of the melody, and it often sticks with me for life. And I
Mm.
wanted that for them. So the Holy Spirit gave that song to me, and I shared it with them. And the little ones, it was 3 different sessions, 30-minute sessions, and the little ones were a little bit antsy. But as soon as I started singing, they just sat down. It was like they were mesmerized. And the older group, they really got into singing with me. And it was one little boy that he picked up the fact that except the queen, and so he would jump up every time we did that part. But uh, what it communicated to me was they got it.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard them humming that song even after we had moved on to other things.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah. So mission accomplished.
Yes, very much so. That's beautiful. Another thing that bring out in this chapter, the fact that Harriet Tubman was able to communicate with people who were well educated, other than just the people who she grew up with that had no education. When she moved to the North, she became an abolitionist and she was sitting among people who were very well educated, doctors,
Yes.
lawyers, and people who taught classes and that's important too, to not be afraid to talk to other people and build your vocabulary. So I'm sure she
Yeah.
learned new words that she wasn't familiar with, and we have to ask questions. What does that mean?
You do. You have to ask questions. My mother was a wordsmith. Well, I mean, I typically would go to her before I went to Webster because I knew she knew the meaning of, just about everything. I had a fifth grade teacher, Mrs. Williams, Nettie Williams, who she was just so good. She taught us in such a thorough way. And it's a skill that to this day, even if it's a word that's new to me, um, I oftentimes can break it down into its pieces and figure out what the word means.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you have to have that understanding to communicate. You have no communication without it, and relationships are so dependent on communication. So, at the very least, you have to make sure that you understand what the other person means by this word. Um, just recently, I was invited to participate in an event, and the person said it was going to be a strong feminist theme. And so I wrote back to her, what does feminist mean to you? Because I know
Mm-hmm.
that that means different things to different people.
Yes.
And so she sent a screenshot to me of what it meant to her. And after her event, we got a chance to talk more in depth. And she said, well, you wrote and asked me about this. And so I'm just curious, what does it mean to you? And I said, well, to me, it just means all things feminine. It's not a power movement to me, it's not a power struggle. And as we continue to talk, we come from very different backgrounds. And so in her background, there are, there were power struggles, and
Mm-hmm.
there was language that was used to keep women in their place, so to
Yes.
speak. I didn't grow up with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was a paper that I had to write some years ago, and in my acknowledgments in that paper, I thanked my mother for never telling me what my place was as a woman. There was nothing that I was ever told by anybody in my family, including the men, that because I was a girl or a young woman, that I could not or should not do.
Mm-hmm.
So, as such, feminist is not it doesn't have anything to do with a power or a fight for power or a power struggle. It's just all things feminine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. That's great explanation on how different words can have different meanings to people, and the only way you can find out about what they're thinking is to ask them and get that.
Ask them.
Let's talk about poetry.
Yes,
We also involved with poetry.
yes,
That's another creative way of speaking, and
it
that
is.
definitely takes some interpretation. You actually have to break it line by line sometime and
Yes,
research some words that are unfamiliar to you, or have an opportunity to hear more from the author of what they're thinking behind the poem, because poetry
definitely.
can be quite doubting to some people. Some people are not into poetry at all because they don't understand. But once you understand, I think the intentions of the or the life behind the author who wrote the story or the poem, it can be much very interesting and heartwarming at times, or
Yes,
funny. It could be funny, it
yes,
could be scary. It could
yes.
portray
Once
all the
once
things.
once you earn once you understand the way they speak. So using Dunbar as an example, um, for a long time I saw his poetry, but just reading it and not having actually studied it, I was wondering what is he saying? Words spelled Daih. Well, I didn't know he was writing in dialects, but once I learned that and
Mm-hmm.
then learned to see what those patterns were with those spellings, then I understood that Daih was there.
Mm-hmm.
But is a southern dialect for the word there. But just picking it up and reading it, I was clueless.
Right, you would be clueless because you don't understand the wording. Well, let me back up and talk about Dunbar a little bit. So I was blessed to be born in Dayton, Ohio, which is the home of Paulus Dunbar. Paulus Dunbar was a outstanding poet, and he not just writing poetry, but songs and plays and stories and books. Paulus Dunbar is African American man, and he was born. I don't have the statistics right here. I'll fill that in. I'll tell you more about when he was born. He died at an early age, and his poetry. He was famous for being able to write in dialect, the way that the his parents and grandparents, who his grandparents were slaves. I think his mother and father were born in slavery. I think how they talked. He could pick up the sound of their words and write it out, which is not easy. Fortunately enough, one of the books that was written by Sarah Bradford, um, and people have criticized her for this, wrote in dialect to talk about Harriet Tubman. And so I sort of picked up some of the dialect that she would use, but I used Paulus Dunbar's poem to help me stay in that dialect because he does such a wonderful job with it. So,
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yes. You know, again, going back to my grandmother real quick, she had a totally different vocabulary. So I had to, and but because she was my elder and I was taught to respect my elders, I thought that these were just words that I didn't know that should be part of my vocabulary. I didn't know that she was pronouncing words that I already knew in a different way. For example, yes, diddy. Have you ever heard yes, diddy?
Uh-uh.
Yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So she would say yes, diddy, and I didn't know what she was talking about, and I couldn't pick it up in the context clues either.
Uh-huh.
So, I had to learn to listen and ask more questions. What does that mean? I was always, to this day, my oldest living aunt, she talks about how curious I was. And I always ask questions. The question
Mm-hmm.
I asked most was probably why, but I would ask questions. What does that mean?
Uh, we're going to do a couple of poems of Paulus Dunbar, and we want to invite people to a event coming up. I'm going to put the flyer in here so we can talk about it a little bit more.
One thought that I had, just thinking about this time with you this morning, is the importance of understanding the connection between relationship, communication, and collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
You you can you can have a relationship, but you can't have a good relationship without good communication.
Right.
You can have communication without collaboration, but you cannot have collaboration. You cannot work together without having a good relationship that that's founded on good communication. Um, you and I, we can communicate endlessly and not ever work together.
Mm-hmm.
We can understand each other's vocabulary and not ever work together. And we don't even have to agree about what those things mean. You know, uh, yesterday, I can say it means yesterday. You can say no, it means orange. You can say
Mm-hmm.
it means something else, and we can agree to disagree when we're just at the communication level. But
Mm-hmm.
if we choose to collaborate, and yesterday is essential to working together, we have to come to an agreement about what it means.
True. That is so true. This is Oin is one of the storytellers who just loves Dunbar and organized a group of people who also love Paul Dunbar to help us tell his get together and recite his poetry. This is Paul Dunbar, born in 1872, died in 1906, very young man. And he was just prolific in all the different ways that he communicated his thoughts. He was internationally known, educator, poet, storyteller, and we come together and we have a program coming up June 29th, and it is 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Zoom. It's free. You do have to register, and I'll make sure that I put that in with this program so you can see that. But we're getting together to talk about his poetry. We have a YouTube channel where we share his poetry, the videos from the programs, and just another way of communicating. I just wanted to share that as it is such a great opportunity coming up following this program to share Dunbar and let people find out more about who he was. And so we thought we'd give you a couple of examples of a couple of poems. We haven't
I,
memorized them. We're reading them.
I,
I want to mention while last week I talked about mentoring, and the person who was quoted was Maya Angelou, who's very well known as an outstanding poet, an author, actress, so many things. And her book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, people don't realize the influence of Paul Laurence Dunbar had on many people who are we listen to and hear their poetry and stories now. I'm going to read a poetry called Sympathy, which has the line, I know why the caged bird sings, which I'm sure inspired Maya Angelou. That's the power of knowing about Paul Laurence Dunbar and how he has influenced many other writers and poets as well.
I have one that I like. It's called Keep a Plugging Away. And I tend to remember things better when it's to a song, just like I mentioned with the little ones coming up with a song for them. So I'll just sing a little bit uh,
Okay.
in the interest of time of Keep a Plugging Away by Paul Laurence Dunbar. I've a humble little motto that is homely though it's true. Keep a plugging away. It's a thing when I've an object that I always try to do. Keep a plugging away. When you rising storms to quell, when opposing waters swell, it will never fail to tell. Keep a plugging away.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And that just shows how you took a poem and sang it. And that just gave it another way of looking at it. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the poem that I am going to read is called Sympathy by Paul Laurence Dunbar. I know what the caged bird feels at last when the sun is bright on the upland slope, when the wind stirs softly through the springing grass, and the rivers flow like the streams of glass, when the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from the chalice steals, I know what the caged bird feels. I know why the caged bird beats his wings till the blood is red on the cruel bars, for he must fly to his perch and cling when he fans would be on the bout and swing. I know why the caged bird beats his wings till the blood is red on the cruel bars, for he must fly back to his perch and cling when he faints would be on the broad a swing.
and the pain still throbs in the old scars, and they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wings, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know the caged bird sings.
To me, this poem is all about what it was like to be enslaved, actually, and not able to free yourself, not able to get out of the situation that you're in, yet you pray. And the hymns that slaves sang, they were truly meant to be hymns of peace and asking for deliverance, for freedom, for God to save them. And that's the inner soul that always yearns to be free. And the birds have that. They can't not imagine being free and always hold on to that. To me, that's what I understand in that poem, Why the Caged Bird Sings, which is called Sympathy. So we're almost finished with our time, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to share one more thing. You shared something before we got started, and something you said you hope that they teach
Oh,
you as
yeah.
far as communication or leadership
Yes,
skills. Share that with us.
yes. We have our son at the last minute. This day was pretty full for me. I had an appointment right before meeting with you, and right before that, he comes to let me know that he needs a ride to the school to meet up with someone who's going to take him to a leadership conference. And I said, okay, the first thing I said was, you need to plan better because I have other things to do. I don't sit around just waiting for the opportunity to take you somewhere. And when we got in the car, I asked, do you have everything you need? Did you pack everything you need? Do you have your toiletries? Yes. Everything was yes. He had everything. We got to the school. We are literally less than a football field away from dropping him off. And then he says, I need to get my papers, referring to the permission papers to go on this trip. They're on the dining room table.
Of
So
course.
I'm hoping that in this leadership conference that he's going to, that they will emphasize the importance of communication in planning.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. There's plenty to learn, and we always can continue to learn. And this is why I like the opportunity to share wise women to share their stories and wisdom with our girls who are listening to this program because we can observe from a different point of view, different perspective. We've been
Yes,
there where they are. And
yes,
so every day is another day to learn something new. And I hope
yes,
that what we've shared today will inspire some young ladies to pay attention to their communication, the oral
yes.
communication, the nonverbal communication. We can tell when you're looking. That says
Right,
something. When you go to school,
right.
well, the
Yes,
teacher's saying, well, I'm not going to mess with her today, or
right.
it comes through. You don't have to say a word. And the way you dress also
Yes.
says
Or
something about
even when you're trying not to say anything, that shows, that just looking straight ahead, but the person that's speaking to you is over here.
you.
So
Hmm.
you're not giving them a face, you're giving a blank face, you're just looking straight ahead. But it's still a message of I'm ignoring you or I'm not
Right,
giving you my time or what have you. I refuse to look at you while you're talking to me.
right.
Uh, you know,
Yes.
slumping the shoulders. It all sends a message.
Right, it does. All sends a message. And the messages we want to send are loving, positive, supportive messages, and communication is the way to do it. I thank you, Viveca, for being here. And
Thank you for inviting me.
yes, it's been great and to get to hear you share on communication and your family and all that you have to share with our girls today. And I greatly appreciate you being here. And I look
Thank
forward to,
you.
thank you so much.
Do you want to know the man who, despite racism, poverty, and chronic illness, wrote over 400 poems and 12 books in less than 16 years? Do you want to know the man who performed for royalty and advised presidents? Do you want to know the voice that is over a century old, but yet still speaks to the challenges of today? Do you want to know who that man is? That man is Paul Laurence Dunbar. Paul Laurence Dunbar, born in 1872 in Dayton, Ohio, to parents who had been enslaved. Despite family hardship, he wrote his first poem at the age of 6 and was published by the time he was 16. At 21, he worked alongside Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells at the 1893 World's Fair. Douglass called him the most promising young man of his race. In just 13 years, Dunbar wrote over 400 poems, 4 novels, short stories, plays, and lyrics. He was the first poet of any race to read at the Library of Congress. Sadly, he died at the age of 33 in his mother's arms. It is said that he was reciting the 23rd Psalm. But Dunbar's legacy still lives. His voice still endures. Dunbar's spirituality was deeply and personal. It resonates still today. Long before Langston, long before Zora, long before Maya, Dunbar spoke through story, image, and song in poems like Sympathy. I know what the cage bird feels, alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes. Or when Melindy sings, ain't you never heard Melindy? Blessed soul, take up the cross. And who can forget, we wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. In Dunbar's works, we hear the heartbeat of a soul grounded in dignity and grace. The Love of Dunbar Collective invites you to join us virtually for an afternoon where spirit meets story and Dunbar's voice resounds loud and clear, reminding us that the human spirit still longs to rise, that quiet strength, everyday beauty, and resilience still matter. The Change Has Come, a program highlighting poems of Paul Laurence Dunbar with themes of mortality, reflection, and spirituality. Streaming on Zoom on June 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is brought to you by the Love of Dunbar Collective. The program is free. However, registration is required. Visit us at www.loveofdunbar.com to register and to learn more about our other offerings and how you can join us in learning more about the prolific writer Paul Laurence Dunbar.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that program today. And again, you can learn so much more. And I just invite you again to join me on my YouTube channel. And together we will explore so many things. I have stories for children. I have each of the chapters in the book in an audio form. You've seen some of my videos where I have put the stories and added some graphics. And then you have me as Harriet Tubman in my storytelling program. So do go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to YouTube channel. It's not a monthly fee. It's giving you a connection to me, and it helps me build my number of people who are following. That's what I want to see. More and more people getting educated about Harriet Tubman, about self-love, and all that I have to teach. I even have something on there, food as medicine. And that's a video that's available as well. So thank you for being here tonight. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I hope to see you Sunday at the Paul Laurence Dunbar program. As I always say before I leave, what my grandmother, Nancy Webster, used to say all the time when things were going well, how sweet it is. How sweet it has been today to have you here with me. And we had a big room of people who love themselves. That's pretty sweet. Thank you for being here. Good night.